Are you a veteran right now considering filing for a benefit, a loan, or an educational stipend? Stop. Drop the pen. Do not hit submit. Before you commit years of your life to a bureaucratic black hole, you need to know this. There are 8 major veteran assistance programs currently teetering on the edge of the legislative abyss. Filing under these specific programs right now is the fastest way to guarantee your application gets lost, your time gets wasted, and your much-needed benefits are permanently denied. We are talking about programs that either have sunset clauses looming, have been defunded by Congress, but are still technically accepting paperwork, or have been completely superseded by newer, more efficient legislation, leaving their legacy filing systems to rot. If you file under the wrong program, you don't just wait longer, you risk losing the opportunity entirely. We have compiled the essential warning list. These are the 8 veteran programs you must absolutely avoid filing under in the current climate. Your financial future, your education, and your family's stability depend on recognizing these pitfalls immediately. Let's dive straight into the first and perhaps the most insidious trap, especially for those leveraging their education benefits. The PASMAR post-9/11 GI Bill transferability. Exception for specific contingency deployments. Now, the GI Bill itself is safe. It is foundational, but there was a niche exception created years ago, designed to allow service members who were mid-career and deployed under highly specific contingency operations. Think certain short-term stabilization efforts or very localized counter-narcotics missions, to transfer their benefits without meeting the standard 4-year active duty retention commitment. After the transfer request was approved, this was a temporary measure, a legislative band-aid for unique circumstances. Its original intent was humane, recognizing that some deployment patterns made the standard commitment window impractical. It served a small targeted population effectively for a brief period. However, that window has not just closed. The mechanism that processed those exceptions has been effectively dismantled. The threat here is purely administrative. While the law technically allows for the existence of this exception for legacy cases, the infrastructure to process new applications under this specific contingency waiver track has been zeroed out in recent budget cycles. If you attempt to file a transfer request utilizing this specific exception code, your paperwork will not be routed to a human reviewer trained in those legacy rules. It will likely hit an outdated database entry, trigger an automatic denial flag based on current standard eligibility requirements, or worse, enter a bureaucratic purgatory known as the review queue for non-standard eligibility. This queue is notorious for processing times that stretch into years, not months. We are seeing claims sit in this specific subcategory for 36 months or more, simply waiting for an analyst who remembers the specific legislative intent of 2012 to pick up the file. The critical mistake veterans are making is seeing the old forms online or hearing about this exception from a well-meaning but outdated source. They believe they are using a shortcut, but they are actually taking a detour into a deep canyon of administrative delays. The alternative is clear. If you are relying on transferability, you must meet the standard, current requirements for retention commitment. If you cannot meet those requirements, pivot immediately to utilizing the benefit yourself or exploring state-level educational waivers, which are often more generous and far faster to process than fighting a defunct federal exception. Do not waste precious months chasing a legislative ghost. Avoid filing under the post-9/11 GI Bill transferability. Exception for specific contingency deployments. This specific exception pathway is functionally dead. It is a time sink. It is a denial waiting to happen. It is a pathway paved with the best of intentions that leads straight to administrative deadlock. The sheer volume of paperwork required to even attempt this legacy filing is staggering, demanding specific deployment orders, unit citations, and often sworn statements that current VA personnel are simply not equipped to verify or even recognize. The system rejects complexity. It demands standardization. This exception is the antithesis of standardization, moving swiftly to the second program, which is causing immense anxiety and confusion for military families. The BPO VA Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers Program, CAFC, for specific Tier 3 legacy applicants. The caregiver program itself has undergone massive, necessary reforms. The Mission Act brought about a complete overhaul designed to standardize benefits and eligibility across the board. This was a positive change aimed at fairness. However, the transition created a critical vulnerability for a very specific cohort, those original legacy participants who were grandfathered into the highest tier, Tier 3, under the old MO. Program rules. These individuals received benefits based on criteria that were less stringent or defined differently than the current tightened guidelines. The problem? The VA is under intense pressure to standardize the CAFC caseload. Tier 3 legacy applications are now being subjected to intense, often retroactive scrutiny during mandatory reevaluations. While the VA has stated they will not immediately kick people out, the bureaucratic reality is that any new filing or even a request for modification or increase under the Pre-Mission Act rules is being flagged for immediate, comprehensive review under the new, stricter criteria. If you are a legacy caregiver attempting to file an extension, a benefit increase, or even a change of address using any form or language that references the old Tier 3 structure, you are inviting a full-scale review that often results in a massive downgrade to Tier 1 or even complete disqualification simply because the old criteria no longer align with the new assessment tools. The legislative intent was to protect these legacy families, but the AL administrative execution is failing them. The VA systems are prioritizing the migration to the new standard. Any new paperwork filed under the old framework is seen as a disruption, a challenge to the standardization effort. The analysts tasked with reviewing these legacy files are overworked, and their default position, driven by internal metrics and legislative pressure, is to force compliance with the new Mission Act definitions. Avoid submitting any new documentation that relies on the old Tier 3 definitions or criteria. If you need to file an update, consult a specialized VSO who understands the nuances of the transition before submitting anything that might trigger a full detrimental reevaluation. The risk is not just a delay. The risk is the complete loss of a vital, high-level stipend. We are seeing cases where years of established support vanish in a single reevaluation, triggered by a minor filing update. This is a program that is not shutting down entirely, but the specific pathway for Tier 3 legacy applicants to file new claims or modifications is functionally shut down because it leads directly to mandatory, high-risk reassessment. The bureaucratic machinery is actively purging the non-compliant legacy files, and any new filing under the old banner is effectively self-reporting for the purge. Let's move to the third program, one focused on career change, the Veteran Readiness and Employment, VR&E. Rapid Retraining Track Pilot Program. VR&E, formerly VOC Rehab, is an incredible benefit. It helps disabled veterans find suitable employment. But within VR&E, there was a specific limited pilot program introduced 3 years ago, the Rapid Retraining Track. This track was designed for veterans with specific high-demand skills like certain IT, certifications, or short-term trade school degrees who needed only 6 months or less of specialized training to re-enter the workforce immediately. The benefit was speed and minimal bureaucratic oversight. It was intended to be lean and fast. The critical issue is that this was always a pilot. It was never intended to be permanent legislation. The funding allocation for the specific rapid retraining track expired 18 months ago, and Congress has not renewed it. However, the forms and the internal VA codes for this specific track still exist within the system. Why? Because bureaucracy moves slowly. Veterans are still applying for it, believing they are choosing the fast lane. They are not. They are choosing the dead end. When you file under the Rapid Retraining Track code now, your application is immediately shunted into a holding pattern. It is waiting for funding that will not arrive. The VR&E counselors are aware of this, but they cannot officially deny the claim until the funding status is definitively updated by Central Command, which often takes years. So your application sits, pending, while you lose valuable time and eligibility for the standard VR&E tracks. We have observed veterans who filed under the Rapid Retraining Track 14 months ago who still have not received a decision, while peers who filed under the Standard Comprehensive Track received their acceptance and started school 6 months ago. The Rapid Retraining Track is a ghost ship in the VA system. It floats there, accepting cargo, but it never reaches port. The immediate alternative? File only under the standard, fully funded VR&E tracks, EBG, the Reemployment Track, or the Independent Living Track, if applicable. Do not attempt to use the RAPID designation. If you qualify for RAPID training, you will qualify for the standard track, and your counselor can still expedite your plan internally once you are approved. Filing under the defunct pilot program only guarantees a lengthy, unnecessary delay. This is a classic case of a program being administratively shut down before it is legislatively removed, creating a massive bottleneck for those unaware of the funding lapse. The complexity of the VR&E system means that these minor program designations carry massive weight in the processing queue. Choose the established path. Avoid the pilot program that has run out of fuel. Now let's address the fourth program, which deals with housing, specifically targeting a very niche area. The SAU-VA Home Loan Native American Direct Loan, NADL, expansion for non-federally recognized tribes. The NADL program is excellent. It provides direct VA loans to Native American veterans for homes on trust lands. It is a vital tool for economic empowerment in tribal communities. A few years ago, there was a legislative push to expand the NADL program, specifically granting eligibility to veterans who were members of state-recognized or non-federally recognized tribes, recognizing the diverse legal status of indigenous groups across the country. This expansion was championed, but ultimately, the specific funding mechanism and the necessary interagency agreements between the VA, HUD, and various state housing authorities required to implement the expansion were never finalized before the legislative session ended. What remains is a bureaucratic nightmare. The VA forms and internal guidance still contain language suggesting that applicants from non-federally recognized tribes might be eligible under the expansion criteria. Veterans are attempting to file under this specific expansion code, believing they are covered. What happens? The application enters the NADL queue, but when it reaches the underwriting stage, the VA Legal Counsel flags it because the necessary legal and financial framework to support the loan on non-trust lands or lands under the jurisdiction of non-federally recognized entities has not been established. The application is then put on hold indefinitely, waiting for a legislative fix that is not forthcoming. The risk here is catastrophic time loss in a volatile housing market. A veteran files, gets stuck in the expansion queue for 10 to 12 months, and by the time they are denied or told to refile, the interest rates have shifted, or the property they wanted is gone. This specific expansion pathway is administratively defunct. The VA cannot legally close these loans without the supporting statutory framework, which has been stalled indefinitely in Congress. The clear alternative. If you are a Native American veteran, confirm your status with a federally recognized tribe if you intend to use the NADL program. If you are not affiliated with a federally recognized tribe, do not attempt to use the NADL expansion code. Immediately pivot to the standard VA Home Loan Guarantee Program. While this requires dealing with a private lender, the process is robust, funded, and predictable. Do not chase a housing loan under an expansion program that lacks the legal foundation to ever close. The Bar Nadil. Expansion for non-federally recognized tribes. Is a paper tiger. It looks like an opportunity, but it is a legislative vacuum. We now turn to the fifth critical program, one that impacts entrepreneurship. The SAR, Small Business Administration, SBA. Veterans Advantage Loan Fee. Waiver. Annual legislative fight. The SBA offers several excellent loan programs for veterans, including the 7A loan program. To make these more attractive, the SBA periodically waives the upfront guarantee fee for loans made to veteran-owned businesses. This is the Veterans Advantage Program. This waiver is a significant financial benefit, often saving the veteran thousands of dollars right at the start. The major problem is that this fee waiver is not permanent law. It is subject to annual, or sometimes biannual, appropriation riders in Congress. Every year there is a fight to renew the waiver. This creates immense uncertainty. When the waiver is close to expiring, or if Congress is late in passing the appropriations bill, the SBA has to operate in a state of limbo. They continue to accept applications under the assumption the waiver will be renewed, but they cannot guarantee the fee waiver will be in place when the loan closes. If you file for an SBA loan specifically relying on the Veterans Advantage fee waiver when its legislative authority is in question, which happens almost every fiscal year, you're taking a massive gamble. We are currently seeing periods where the waiver status is ambiguous for months. Banks, fearing they will be stuck with the fee, become extremely hesitant. They either slow walk the veteran's application, demanding extra collateral or unnecessary documentation, or they simply refuse to process the loan under the waiver code until renewal is certain. This hesitation and delay can kill a startup business before it even opens its doors. The entire purpose of the waiver, to encourage veteran entrepreneurship, is undermined by its precarious legislative status. Avoid filing an SBA loan application specifically contingent on the Veterans Advantage fee waiver during periods of legislative uncertainty. Instead, assume the fee will be required and structure your business plan accordingly. If the waiver comes through, it is a bonus. If you rely on it and Congress delays, your entire business funding timeline collapses. While the SBA loan program is robust, the fee waiver pathway is too volatile. It is a program that is constantly on the verge of legislative shutdown, making reliance on it a critical mistake. The bureaucracy surrounding the SBA loan processing requires absolute certainty regarding fees, and when Congress fails to provide that certainty, the veteran applicant pays the price in delays and lost opportunities. The paperwork involved in these loan applications is monumental, and having to refile or restructure due to a lapsed waiver is a devastating setback. Let's address the sixth program concerning health care, the VA Dental Insurance Program. SHEN VDP for non-service connected vets, high cost, low enrollment concern. The VA provides comprehensive dental care for veterans with service-connected dental conditions or those rated 100% P&T. For everyone else, the VA offers VDIP, a voluntary low-cost dental insurance program through third-party carriers. It's an option, not an entitlement. The critical issue facing VDIP is sustainability, specifically for the general population of non-service-connected veterans. VDIP has historically suffered from low enrollment and adverse selection, meaning only those who know they need expensive dental work enroll, driving up the cost for the insurers and the VA. The program is hemorrhaging financial support and is constantly under review for termination due to low cost effectiveness. In recent budget discussions, VDIP has been consistently listed as a potential cut, as the VA argues, that veterans can access similar or better commercial plans through the marketplace. Why should you avoid filing under it now? Because the uncertainty is impacting the quality of coverage and the speed of claims processing. As the program faces potential defunding, the third-party carriers involved are becoming extremely cautious. They are tightening their claims adjudication processes, increasing scrutiny on pre-authorization requirements, and generally slowing down the entire system, anticipating a legislative axe. If you enroll in VODIP now, you are likely enrolling in a program that is actively being throttled by its carriers. Claims are taking 6 to 9 months to process, and denial rates for complex procedures have spiked. The alternative: if you need dental insurance and are not service-connected, investigate commercial plans offered through the healthcare marketplace or private carriers. While VODIP appears to be the VA option, the current administrative slowdown and the high probability of its legislative termination make it a poor investment of your time and premiums. Avoid filing or enrolling in VODIP until its future is secured. It is a program where the administrative risk of slow processing far outweighs the benefit of the discounted premium. The constant threat of shutdown has created a chilling effect on the carriers, and the veterans are suffering the consequences of bureaucratic paralysis. The 7th program is a procedural leftover, but one that traps thousands of veterans every year. The PACI, Veterans Choice Program, VCP, Residual Claims. Processing. The Veterans Choice Program, VCP, was officially replaced years ago by the Mission Act's Community Care Network, CCN. The CCN is the current, fully funded and functioning system for veterans to receive care outside of VA facilities. However, the VCP was a massive program, and there are still residual claims, old bills, and complicated billing disputes floating around the system from its tenure. The VA is obligated to process these legacy VCP claims. The problem is that the VCP claims processing team has been drastically reduced, and the remaining staff are dedicated to closing out the oldest, most complex disputes. The trap: VSOs or veterans who are filing supplemental claims, appeals, or requests for reimbursement related to care received before the Mission Act transition often mistakenly file under the old VCP codes or use VCP forms. When this happens, their new paperwork is immediately routed to the defunct VCP residual claims team. This team is overwhelmed, understaffed, and prioritized for ancient disputes. Your new claim, even if legitimate, is now stuck behind years of bureaucratic detritus. We are seeing simple reimbursement requests sit for 18 months because they were mistakenly filed under the VCP code instead of the current CCN appeals process. The VCP claims processing pathway is functionally shut down for new business. It exists only to die a slow administrative death. If you have a legacy claim, you must consult with a VSO to ensure your paperwork is filed using the current CCN dispute mechanism, referencing the VCP dates and care, but utilizing the modern administrative routing. Filing under the old VCP designation guarantees your claim will be lost in the bureaucratic graveyard. Do not file under the VCP residual claims process. Use the CCN mechanism for all community care disputes, regardless of the date of service. Finally, the 8th program is highly localized but affects critical populations. The FAR, Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program, HVRP, State-Specific Grant Pools, Highly Localized Funding Risk. The HVRP is a federal program that provides grants to local organizations to help homeless veterans find employment. It is a vital service. The program's structure relies on a mix of national funding and highly specific, time-limited state or regional grant pools. These regional grant pools are often funded by temporary state legislation or specific earmarked federal funds that are not renewed consistently. When a local organization receives one of these temporary grants, they often hire staff and launch specific, aggressive outreach programs. Veterans in those regions hear about the new program and rush to enroll. The danger: these state-specific grant pools are notorious for sudden, zero-notice shutdowns. The grant expires, the funding vanishes, and the local organization immediately ceases all intake and services related to that grant. If you enroll in a local HVRP service that is funded by one of these hyper-localized, state-specific grants, you risk getting halfway through a job training program or a housing assistance process only to have the funding cut off mid-stride, leaving you stranded. The program itself is not shutting down, but the specific intake point you are relying on is highly unstable. How do you avoid this? When seeking HVRP assistance, you must ask the local service provider, is this specific program funded by a permanent federal allocation, or is it reliant on a temporary state or regional grant pool? If the answer is the latter, proceed with extreme caution and have a backup plan. The bureaucratic risk is that the paperwork you file under that specific grant is rendered meaningless overnight when the funding sunsets. Focus on accessing HVRP services that are demonstrably funded by the stable national allocation streams. Avoid filing under any HVRP intake that is tied to a temporary, state-specific grant pool. These local pools are perpetually on the verge of shutdown and collapse, leading to devastating outcomes for veterans who are already in precarious positions. Let us briefly recap the immense danger of these 8 programs and pathways. The common thread running through all of them is not malice, but bureaucratic inertia and legislative neglect. When a program is technically alive but administratively defunded, superseded, or based on defunct legislative authority, it becomes a sinkhole for veteran applications. Your time is your most precious resource, and filing under a system that is designed to fail is the definition of wasted effort. We discussed the JARL post-9/11 GI Bill transferability, exception for a specific contingency. Deployments. A pathway that exists only on paper but leads to years of stalled processing because the analysts and the funding to manage the legacy criteria are gone. We detailed the critical risk facing the VA Comprehensive Assistance for Family Caregivers Program CAFC for specific Tier 3 legacy applicants, where any new filing under the old criteria triggers a high-risk reevaluation under the new, stricter Mission Act standards, often leading to a loss of benefits. We exposed the HICE Veteran Readiness and Employment (VR&E) Rapid Retraining Track pilot program. A fast lane that ran out of gas 18 months ago, yet continues to accept applications, trapping veterans in endless pending status while they wait for non-existent renewal funding. We warned about the housing trap, the VA Home Loan Native American Direct Loan, NADL, expansion for non-federally recognized tribes, which lacks the necessary statutory framework to ever close a loan, leading to months of delays in a volatile housing market. We covered the financial instability of the ICE Small Business Administration, SBA, Veterans Advantage loan fee waiver, a benefit that is constantly subject to annual legislative squabbling, making it too unreliable to rely upon when structuring a business loan. We highlighted the administrative decay of the AVA dental insurance program, VDIP, for non-service-connected vets, where the constant threat of legislative shutdown has led third-party carriers to slow-walk claims and increase denial rates, making the program functionally ineffective. We emphasize the procedural quicksand of the BAN, Veterans Choice Program, VCP, residual claims processing, a defunct system that traps new appeals and reimbursements behind years of legacy disputes. And finally, we detailed the extreme local risk associated with the Homeless Veterans Reintegration Program, HVRP, state-specific grant pools. which can vanish overnight, leaving vulnerable veterans stranded mid-program. The core lesson here is vigilance. Do not rely on outdated forms, old regulations, or word-of-mouth advice from veterans who received their benefits under a different legislative era. The VA landscape is constantly shifting, and what was a viable option 3 years ago is often a guaranteed dead end today. Before you file any claim, appeal, or application, you must verify the current legislative and budgetary status of that specific program pathway. Always choose the fully funded, current, standard filing mechanism, even if it seems slightly slower than a niche exception. The standard pathway is predictable. The exceptions we discussed are designed for failure in the current administrative environment. Your mission is to advocate for yourself, and the best advocacy is informed caution. Choose the path of certainty. Choose the path of guaranteed processing. Avoid these 8 specific pathways that are functionally on the verge of shutdown, guaranteeing only delay, denial, and frustration. Do not let bureaucracy steal your benefits. Be smart. Be informed. Now, go file the right way.